All right, welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of the Reminder Remedy. I am extremely excited about today's interview. I think it's going to be a very unique profile. We have only had a few women in tech on the show. And outside of kind of learning about today's guest, she has an amazing product that I truly believe is going to change lives and have an impact for generations to come. So more on that. So today we are welcoming Heather Mayo Smith. Welcome to the Reminder Remedy.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you. Thank you for having
I am so glad to have you. So we're going to kick it off with just a quick bio so you all can get the full scope of who we have on the line today. All right, so Heather is an award-winning interactive storytelling pioneer and technology visionary who brings over a decade of immersive storytelling leadership to StoryFile. In 2010, Heather developed the first 3D interactive conversation with Holocaust survivor Rose Schindler through her creative agency, Conscious Display. At the time, she was creating physical video installations at the United Nations, USC, and in Havana, Cuba. But she understood that the future of storytelling lay at the intersection of digital media and natural conversation and decided to create it. Heather developed a strategic partnership with two global entities with competencies in visual media and technology, USC Shoah Foundation and the Institute for Creative Technologies. The partnership she led has resulted in the development of a new medium, natural conversation video. Through Heather's leadership, immersive, interactive, natural conversation, video has gone from being a concept to a reality, combining high fidelity, multi-scopic video with voice commands to deliver commercial grade natural conversations with an individual, whether it's a life-size video or your mobile device, replicating the emotional experience of having a conversation with a person. She developed and pioneered Dimensions in Testimony, a program to interview Holocaust survivors in volumetric interactive video without the survivor actually being present. Dimensions in Testimony won both the People's Choice Award and the Jury Prize at Sheffield Doc Fest in 2016. She produced and led the project before moving on to found and lead StoryFile. Wow. And for those of you all who are listening and you're kind of trying to grasp visually what is it that we're even talking about in terms of the technology, I want you right now to pause and just go to the website so you can really see it. But imagine like almost like a video of your grandmother or of a civil rights leader or someone that you always just really wanted to know about their lives. I shared with Heather that, well, I actually didn't share with you, but I mentioned my grandparents and my lineage here in Atlanta goes back. But both of my grandparents on my father's side passed before I was born, but they were very, very instrumental in the educational arena here in Atlanta. One was the dean at Spelman. My grandmother was the superintendent for Atlanta Public Schools for years. And I find myself going and finding old research papers and articles that are like in archives. Like, I just want to talk to this person. Yeah. And so with that being said, I want to really hear from you. How did you even come up with this concept? Like, what drove you to create such a dynamic product?
It was actually really simple. Like you said, you just have questions, right? And I happen to be naturally a very curious person, but we had been talking to, and Holocaust survivors had been talking in the public for a couple generations now, since World War II. So our understanding of that history, a lot of that comes from them, and they had so much to teach us about being human and life's journey and the ups and downs and how you manage to be resilient and just keep going through and everything, and through the worst that humanity can throw at you. It's it's truly, they have such a truly amazing life to share with us, life history.
Mhm.
So I realized one day as I was doing a lot of these exhibitions that, my great grandchildren would never get a chance to ask them questions or, be learn from them at all. And
Mhm.
then it occurred to me that, well, if you can do certain things that I saw technology doing, why couldn't you do this?
Mhm.
Um, why couldn't you replicate having a conversation with somebody and you asking what you want to know? Like, you have questions for your grandmother that maybe your siblings don't have because you've had a different life's journey. So you're curious about different things. There are questions that I guarantee you that your parents didn't even ask while their parents were alive.
Mhm.
But they don't even know those answers to certain things. And our identity as people, that's made up of our past and all of the people that lived before us.
Mhm.
So if a person can actually have that conversation, like if your grandmother could have that conversation with you, if you could have that conversation, that would change you. That
Mhm.
would add to who you are.
Mhm.
So in this day and age, why wouldn't you take the opportunity to record yourself in this way that could replicate that conversation in the future so that you're able to add to one of your future ancestors' lives
Mhm.
and just build on that and build their identity and influence their identity?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't everyone take that opportunity to learn from our past,
Mhm.
basically?
Wow. I'm like getting emotional even thinking about the ability for my grandchildren to like hear all of the things that I have to say, right? And I even that's one of the reasons why I even started this podcast was to create a time capsule. But
Mhm.
what's so interesting about what you said is, the storytelling piece of it helping to shape our identity. Within my coaching program, the life crafting program, I use what I call my simple method. And the S, it stands for story, stands for your story. And so the exercise that I have people start out with is a ton of obvious self-discovery assessments, but then it's about understanding where you come from. So it's going and interviewing family members, learning about them, also learning about who you were as a child, right? Because so many of us find ourselves kind of returning to self once we go through, college and we're out in the world and we're like, what did I really want to do when I was like 5, right? And then we return to self. And so, when I was first introduced to this concept, I'm thinking, oh my God, like I need this for every client, right? Because when I went and did that Google search about my grandfather, I found this document that he wrote essentially talking about how they were going to expand educational opportunities in the Black community here in Atlanta. And right when I found that, it was when I was transitioning in my career around more coaching and development. And I kept wondering, why do I have this pull in a different direction? And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is in my DNA. Like this stuff matters to me on a level that was created before I was even aware, and I think it just makes a ton of sense. So let's talk about what does that look like though, right? Because I've seen the end product and I've seen a few screenshots, but if you could kind of walk us through so that people can conceptualize if I wanted to create a story file with my mother right now, what would that process look like?
By the way, I'm getting chills. I got chills
Really?
about your grandfather because I know exactly, and now I know exactly how you feel, and those are the exact kind of connections that we
Mhm.
want people to make with their ancestors, or
Yeah.
that lived before them. Um, so if you wanted to record your mother's story file and her story, you just go onto the website. It's called StoryFile Life, and it walks you through um, creating a script first, basically. And what you want to do is there's over 2,000 questions that you have access to. You can buy them in packages, but and then you could buy access to all of them at once. Um, you pick the questions that relate to your life in particular.
Mhm.
We have all kinds of different, very specific storylines for people of all. There are a number of experiences, a number of different lifestyles, like things that they might have gone through in their lifetime that you might want them to talk about. Aside from everyone's, you know, um, pretty there are universal things that we all do as human beings, and
Mhm.
those questions are in there as well. Uh,
Mhm.
you pick all the questions. You might want to, go through some of the tutorials or the tips and tricks about how to record, but essentially it is, I'll give you the nutshell. You want to pick a place that is comfortable for them and you to have this conversation. You want to pick some place that you can kind of control the lighting, and they have good lighting on them. You want to wear something that's kind of simple, not too busy, or and if you are especially are going to do it over over a number of days, you do want them to be in that outfit over those over
Mhm.
those days. If you want to maintain some continuity, you don't have to, but it helps. Then you just turn on the computer and you start recording. You can use your laptop, you can use your phone, you can use a webcam on if you want to do a little bit higher quality filming. You can use a webcam on your laptop. Just put it up right in front of them, and they look straight into the camera. You're behind your computer, or you're behind the phone, and you just ask them the questions as they come up. You hit record, they answer. When they're done, you stop recording. It's that easy. And then you save and move on to the next. The one great thing about doing this is you learn so much about them. I have not yet seen one person interview their family member or watch us do it
Mhm.
professionally that hasn't said to us, I have never heard that story before.
Yeah.
Wow, I've never heard them say that. And or I never knew that about my parents.
Mhm.
You learn something every single time. And not only your family members, but a lot of our interviewees have said this is like a massive like a massive therapy session to go.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
You like you were talking about in your field, you ask your clients to go through and really analyze where they came from, how their identity was developed, who they are,
Mhm.
and where all that came from. This is a chance for you to go through your life from beginning to end and think about things you don't normally think about on a daily basis,
Mhm.
and do it in a few sittings, but really think about those things
Mhm.
that you did as a child, or memories you have of friends, or what was important to you,
Mhm.
and in general what happened to you, and people don't often, you think you've forgotten a lot, but you actually, it triggers memories that
Mhm.
it's unbelievable unfolding almost right in front of your eyes. It's
Mhm.
really a cool process.
Yeah.
The best part about it's the best part of my job.
Oh my
Actually.
goodness. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And I've gone through, similar experiences through like StoryCorp where we record, like we did a project with our sorority where, again, we wanted to create a capsule of history, right? We have this, long-standing organization that has done so much in terms of service. So they had us come in and my mom shared, what it was like when she was coming into the sorority versus my experience. And that was just like a moment in time for us that we will always have. But then they added it to the archive for the sorority, right? So it's like you have your family, but then your family's experience also provides almost like this experience that represents the community or the city or the culture, right? One of the things that I always rant about is just how do I say the cultural what is the word that I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank. Basically, things that are being passed down in terms of uh, I'm calling them best practice because I'm a coach and I can't think of a better word, but like how to do things that enhance your lifestyle, right? So, I interviewed one of my guests. She started a company that creates a sleep remedy, a natural sleep aid. But really, it was like her great grandmother's like Asian like herb, that she was able to get like funding for to go and create like this $1 million business, right? And there's so many traditional medicines or healing remedies that I feel like is missing from my lineage, because of slavery, essentially. Like there's so much heritage that's missing. And, when I first started having children, I have some friends who are Nigerian who they had aunts and cousins and sisters that would come to town and, make these soups and broths and wrap them in these cloths and just really aid their postpartum experience. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, what do I do? Like, what do I do to, shrink my uterus or to, give healing powers to my body? And it just became very clear that there is a gap in our history, and something like this, in my opinion, it's like you said, there's still people out there that know these things, but it's just so segmented. So I noticed on your website, you all do have, you can use it for personal and business, and you all work with a lot of nonprofits and a lot of celebrities and, big civil rights activists. Have you all considered ways that you can close gaps in communities that maybe the history feels fragmented?
Oh, okay. So let's go there. The African American community, you're right. It has massive gaps, and not only just following family trees, you don't even know who your ancestors actually are in most cases, or in a lot of cases anyway. It's we have families that end up doing their DNA in 23andMe and come to us and say, I never even knew I had this great aunt that lives in a different state.
Mm,
And then I have all these cousins now. Or I didn't even know that I actually have another brother.
wow.
Um, so it's it's truly important to capture that. You're absolutely right. You couldn't be more right. If nobody captures that, it's gone after one or two generations. I mean, think of the telephone game and think of how these stories and oral history gets twisted and it becomes myth almost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Why not hear the real why not hear the story from the people who actually lived it if you can, or what they know, because you're not going to be able to obviously record generations that have already passed away, but you can record the closest version of that story
mm-hmm,
that you will ever have for future generations, so that it doesn't get manipulated and gone through and edited and added to and become myth. It's it's capturing what was important to them, all the knowledge that they have. Think about all the Native American communities, and they have these medicine men, and we're trying right now. It's a very guarded tradition, and we understand that and totally respect that. But in by the same token, the knowledge that these people have is going to be lost. There
mm-hmm,
will be nobody to physically teach the next generation left. There hasn't been generations of them that have been mentored to do this. And
mm-hmm,
it's getting scarcer and scarcer. So when that's all over, there's not going to be that record. And could be incredibly valuable to humanity down the line. And even for them, just keep it for themselves alive. So we're trying to get, all of these histories, all of this knowledge can be captured and saved now.
Mhm.
Now we have the power to do that. And you don't have to sit down and watch 10 hours of video for, that's, I've recorded my grandmother and I've got 8 hours of video. Like, who's actually going to watch that? Who's
Mhm.
actually going to sit down and watch the 8 hours? Maybe you might, but chances are you're not really going to. You've got it, but you're not really, no one's really going to watch it. Or they write autobiographies, but you can't actually see the person. You don't hear them saying it. You don't get a sense of who they really were. You can imagine, but is that imagination right? You don't know.
Mhm.
So capturing video and being able to just ask the questions you want to ask when you yourself are going through that part of your life's journey, because that's when you're really curious. When you're having children, you're curious about what your mom did or your grandmother did, or how they managed, or what was your relationship like at that moment, how did it affect it, all these different questions you might have that you don't really ask
Mhm.
when they're alive. it and it all adds to your identity and who you are, and how that comes through to the rest of the world through you.
Mhm.
You hold that all in you. It
Mhm.
makes up every bone, every the DNA of it makes up our own DNA, our own stories.
Yeah.
And those are very powerful. I just don't want people to lose that. And I want people now that it's possible to ask and have these conversations and get to really feel as if you know these people.
Mhm.
I mean, we have people that have talked to story files for maybe an hour. Some people, kids are amazing. Kids can talk to these story files for actually like 45 minutes. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable. Teachers are constantly amazed. But then they'll get a chance to meet those individuals in person. I can't even tell you how they walk up to them, they will hug them. They're like, I know you. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I know you. It's truly amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a gift. It really is a gift.
So, as an organization, do you all target certain groups? So, you mentioned the medicine men. How do you try to get this product in those hands of kind of those staple things that you want to preserve?
It's not easy because it's still a new technology. Not a lot of people really understand it. You have a lot of cultural barriers to break down, especially with the Native Americans. Like I said, they are very guarded, and rightly so. And they want to protect it, but yet they want to make it public. So it's a balance, right?
Mhm.
But you have to let people know that this exists. There are languages in this world that no one will speak in 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
And those have to be preserved, or I would think somebody would want to preserve those. You can preserve all of that. You can preserve all of these cultures that are not not going to physically exist, but still you can maintain their, I want to use the word spirit.
Mhm.
Like you can maintain that like you were talking about the Nigerian family and their relatives and all of the things that they would come with and do, and that it would truly be helpful, and just that most of that is probably just from a spiritual sense,
Mhm.
and what it does to your sense of positivity and nurturing, and you feel loved. It might not work, none of it might work, but it it's it's family lore. It's tradition, and
Mhm.
it makes you feel comfortable. You feel comforted, and that's probably the most important part about keeping these alive, is
Mhm.
the comfort and the sense of home and calm that knowing this helps you have.
Yeah.
Now you're
Yeah.
gonna make now you're gonna make me cry.
I know. This is like, I mean, to have such a big why, right? Like we always say, like start with your why when you're building your company.
Right.
And this just to me just goes so deep and it just could be so impactful. And it just makes me think about even the direction that humanity is going. We're becoming so disconnected. It's like we really don't get to see people as much anymore. We don't get to interact with them.
Right.
So being able to kind of have technology actually work in our favor, feels really good. So sorry to make you tear up. I got a little misty too.
It's fine.
um,
But you're right. I mean, you're right. It's you don't live like we used as humanity. We used to live with our grandparents. We used to live in, everybody was used to be together through, birth to death, and you don't necessarily have that. So you do need to have new ways to keep that story and keep those stories and keep those people close to you, and know their story like you wouldn't because you're not living around them, so you don't know their story day to day. But the videos help that because you see all the body language. So much of our communications actually in body language, and human humans have an amazing way of telling people's and feeling people's uh, emotions from watching them and looking into their eyes, that you don't want to lose that. And that's a big part of feeling like you've connected with somebody.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I spent a stint in sales and we would always say, oh, stories sell, right? And I saw on your site that a lot of sales teams can give examples. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant because I can say, okay, this is how you should do it in this situation. But that doesn't mean anything until I'm actually like, I'm showing you. Like when I was studying my coach at the time, I would study her mannerisms and like when she would put in a punchline for a joke, and then I would just like mimic that until I got my own style. So it's just, we could go on and on in terms of why this is just amazing. I know that it's a family business. So what is that like? What is it like to work with your family, kind of have this project become, so ahead of its time, but really kind of the perfect time? Like, what has that been like for you?
um well, it's increasingly not as much of a family business my family members have gone on to do their own great things, fortunately.
Mhm.
um it really didn't I didn't intend it to be that way. It just I happened to marry the executive director of the USC Shoah Foundation,
Okay.
working on the project that I was working on before. So, and he was, obviously a massive supporter and understood the project incredibly well. I mean, he wrote his PhD, and the last chapter of his PhD thesis was talking about how you have to really understand people and get their personal stories. You have to do it through conversation.
Mhm.
So it's uh, we've always been a team in doing this, and truly, it's been our passion and our luck and our blessing to be able to do this for families, and it's we happen to work really well together. It doesn't hurt that I grew up in a family business either.
What was the family business?
Jewelry stores, retail.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I guess I'm kind of used to the whole 24 hours, 7 days a week,
Mhm.
talking about business.
Mhm.
It might not bother me as much as other people. You talked earlier on about work-life balance and how you coach
Mhm.
people. So I'm probably not your typical. Um, I spend a lot of my day actually, talking people into finding work-life balance when I absolutely have none. So, you know, we but the reason that I got it, so the reason we got into the whole family, I happen to have had a lot of family members, and I currently have our one of our middle daughter still works for us, and I mean, I bless every day that she works for us because she's brilliant, and we couldn't do it without her, actually, really. Um, but we've been fortunate to have kids that have different kinds of talents along the way that have helped. I think COVID also, and I started this in 2018, and so I've had different family members come in at different points where you need different skills. And as a startup, you don't pay a lot. You don't, you're working 24/7. You need people you trust, and you need people that are going to do an amazing job for you because they really believe in what you're doing.
Mhm.
And who does that happen to be? You look around, and some of it happens to be family members. So why not just have them help?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what happened over the years.
Mhm.
And then one went on to have her own company. She was in marketing, and um, another one ended up starting her own mobile app, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Uh, and then, we just, you, you surround yourself. My grandfather said once to me, know your weaknesses and know your strengths
Mhm.
as a business, in life, I guess. It doesn't have to just be as an entrepreneur, but surround yourself with the best possible people that you can afford to fill in those gaps, like what you're not strong at.
Mhm.
Get anybody that you can, the best you can get to surround you and fill in that, because that's the only way you'll be successful. Is you really being honest with yourself, like, I can't do this. I need someone that's really, really top of their game to get this done.
Mhm.
And it's oftentimes great leaders know, I think, when to pull in people and do things that they're not going to get done. And they have to be able to, their egos have to let them know, I can't do this. I need help,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that makes people that helps to make people successful. There are a lot of other factors, luck being one of timing, luck, all of your typical things, also that you
So you
can't
mentioned that
control.
you had one of your daughters join. How many children do you have?
Ah, so I this is my second marriage. So
Okay.
we have five together,
Okay.
and his ex-wife was a much stronger woman than I was, I always say, because she had three and I only had two. So,
Okay.
but not only that, she had three within 4 years.
Yeah.
So I was no, I could never. That's one of I know my strength, I know my weakness in that area, and that was definitely not one I could have done.
So
Success.
so
She
two or five.
did
Would
it
you
really.
say?
She did it successfully too. So I give her a lot of credit.
Exactly. I'm always like, what do you need to a resume for? Just know that I have four kids under the age of 7 and they're alive. Like that's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
But I'm curious because there were a few things that you said that in my mind, I'm just like, everything is backwards. So this is what I'm always ranting about. So for context, my husband's parents literally just left after staying with us for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
It was heavenly. Like to have daily family support, to be able to witness my children establish this bond, and I mean, because they go to my in-laws live in Virginia, they've traveled there, but it's not the same when you're just there for a weekend, to have them. They've really been here for a month, but at my in-laws, my other brother-in-law's house. So anyway, we've had them for a month essentially. I didn't have close grandparent relationship, so to see that was beautiful. Outside of that, it was also the daily support where I don't have to say, stop this, do that alone. Like they can do it. I wake up every day with no dishes in my sink. Like I have help with laundry, like grocery shopping. Like my daughter had them at her practice to watch her, do gymnastics. And, when they left, I was just like, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, why did the Industrial Revolution ruin family structure? Like I remember growing up and being told, like, make sure you go away for college, make sure you go, get a job in New York City. It was kind of like this, everything better is away from home. And now I'm in this space where all I want is my family. Like I want my mom around, I want my cousins around. I live in Atlanta. Everything is an hour away. Everybody's in a different area. So my kids barely know their cousins. So I'm always like, we need to all go back to living in the same house, in the same cul-de-sac. And we need to be thinking about the future of work as family run businesses. And I think obviously there are challenges, but the beauty of that is you get to really create, to some degree, work-life balance in the sense of this is my life. Like this is my why for my family. This is our contribution to, civilization essentially versus everyone kind of being siloed. So when you were talking, I was just thinking like, to have a family business is something that I really want to be able to pass down to my children because it gives them an option. It gives them somewhere to start, someone to say like, hey, you don't have to stay with this business, but you can learn like these fundamental principles, like your dad or your father said to you, I think was your father or your grandfather said, work, get people that have strengths and weaknesses. I don't know why I just went on that rant, but that is kind of my philosophy. And so I was just curious, what was that like kind of bringing children into this space? And, is it something that as they get older, they have a natural curiosity? Or did you kind of say, hey, this is where your summer intern is? Like, what did that look like?
Oh, uh, I think it just kind of evolves. You know,
Okay.
you ask for help, and they're there, and it happened to be at points in their lives when it was a good option. I mean, it worked. Um, it's I want to go back to something you said about that's how it should be, and it is. You're right. It is a lot easier. It's a lot easier when you're raising kids and you have a family of your own to have that support and have that help. It makes all the difference in the world. And I wish to God that more people didn't have to go leave their home, leave their families to get really good jobs to make a living in order to have a home and a family. I wish they could stay where they were and live and work and um, experience that life's journey with their family, supporting them on it. And it's, yeah, you can get a great community, you can have amazing friends, but it's not exactly the same as family. Um, and then you hear about a lot of family arguments or families getting torn apart about it, but that's you have to be able to talk through all of that and have really good communication. You also have to have respect for every single one of them if they work with you. That's key. And they have to pull their weight as well, because then if they don't and they don't add value, then everybody around the company that is not does not happen to be related to you is going to resent them. So that's always a, a balance. I mean, obviously, unless you can keep it just to your family. If you have 11 kids, they're all smart. You're golden. You're golden. But everybody has their own things. I think it helps if they have their own thing that they do really well, and so they're not competing against each other as siblings. So that kind of helps. But going back to just let's take the business out of the equation. Just living together, being around. My sister could not. Oh, my sister actually works in the family business or this business too, and that was the. I mean, I needed a really, really, really good salesperson, and she was definitely the. And talk about your DNA, like having it in your DNA. She's probably the best salesperson I've ever met, and my grandfather was the best. My mom is the best, and she got that gift.
I
That
bet, yeah.
she got that definitely. So of course, we were gonna make we were gonna make her. But when she was raising her kids, she needed help, and my mom and dad really stepped in. You know, I was fortunate that I didn't need as much help day to day, but I don't think she could have done it without my mom and dad around. Without they could not have done it without their grandparents, and the bond that they have with the is just priceless.
Mhm.
It's amazing. So you and there's a lot more to it actually than just having that time with them, or like having that knowing them and just visiting. You're right. When they were you saw a difference between visiting them for a
Mhm.
weekend and them actually being there and living there and being a part of your daily life and routine. It's different, and that relationship that your kids will build with them will be different
Mhm.
because of it. So yeah,
And it's so interesting because I have friends who
I don't
were,
want to make anyone sad that doesn't have the option to have that, but
I mean, and we talk about it on the show all the time. We actually just talked about it on a recent episode, how not having that village is impacting
yeah,
mothers severely, because having a nanny or having an au pair, all of these things are great, but it's still not the same.
the
Because
same.
the missing link, in the spirit of story files, is that when grandparents are around, there is an exchange of knowledge that happens on a regular basis.
Mhm.
I have friends who were raised by their grandparents if their parents had them young,
Mhm.
and to me, they have just a different level of skill. Like I can think of my friend, like she knows how to cook, she knows how to sew, like her confidence is just different, and it's
Yeah.
because her grandmother, was older, she was retired, she was really able to be present with her. Like she wasn't this on the go parent where it's kind of like, okay, figure it out, what are you going to eat,
Yeah.
and again, if I was recording my story file right now, it would be talking about my philosophy that, and this is just going to sound super radical, but people on my show have heard me say this. I really feel like, we are meant to have children um, when we get our menstrual cycle. And I know that feels young, right? So don't take me like, quote me on this. But when I think about like physiology, it's like, okay, most of us get it around our teen years. And then people have this case of like, well, we're not mature enough to really raise kids yet. And I'm like, but maybe we weren't meant to raise our own kids. Maybe it was meant to be like every other generation. I mean, think about it, right? Because back in the day, it was like people were having kids
I don't think you're wrong. Exactly.
16 to 20 years old, but they would go out and work for the family. They would go and run the business, be the salesman, run the errands. And the children were home with the grandparents. The grandparents no longer had to work. They could just pass on tradition. And then guess what? I raised my grandkids because now I have wisdom, and now I'm older. I
And now
mean, it all makes sense to me. I keep trying to tell my mom she needs to be raising these kids, not me, but she's not going for it. But
but it's true. They have the experience, so you can lean on that. You're so funny, and I want to. You're so funny. So I happened to have my kids pretty young, um,
mhm.
and I did have my parents around me, and but I also had an au pair, and I can tell you that that relationship is very, very different, very different. There's a level of respect, first of all, that I I don't see in all my other friends, and I've gone through this for 30 years. So um, I don't see they do have a connection, and they do have a very it's a very strong bond, especially if that person had stayed with them through their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's not the same as a grandparent, and you don't learn. You may have an emotional connection, but you don't learn knowledge like
Mm-hmm.
from your older generation,
Mm-hmm.
and the level of respect is very different. So yes, and also there is something actually to be said. I know a lot of women want to wait until they okay, so the one thing I hear all the time, especially with these younger generation, oh, I can't afford to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we just interviewed a woman by the name of Dolores Huertas.
Mm-hmm.
She was Cesar Chavez. She started the Farm Workers Association with Cesar Chavez and the whole movement, and very, very, very well known. She had 11 kids,
Mm-hmm.
11.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she said once you get to three, it becomes a lot easier because then they start raising the others for you.
Mm-hmm.
So she almost had like an internal, whole uh ecosystem of like kids like to take care of each other and help. But they really, because she was so busy, traveling around the world with the movement and really fighting for the work, farm workers' rights and
Mm-hmm.
immigrant rights, um, she ended up having to leave her kids to be raised by her parents and her, their grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
and the other older children. But not only that, the community also helped too,
Mm-hmm.
because they knew what she was doing was purposeful, right? Um, so she actually will admit to you she didn't really raise her kids
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. She was there, obviously, for a lot of the major, she was impactful in but there were a lot of other people that raised them and had those roles at different times. So it does. They weren't kidding when they said it does take a village.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of that village, it'd be really, really nice if a lot of that village was family. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people don't have that option. They don't have the ability, but if if you do treasure it really and use it as the most, you will gain what you can't even imagine, and your kids also will have so much, and their lives will be so much richer if they spend time and they get to know them, and they have those relationships with them. um, Also, the part about being young, let me go back to that, because I often hear like, you can't, oh no, we can't afford it. And I always say to them, okay, first of all, children come with money. It's my in-laws famous words. um but they also, you figure it out, and it's you keep thinking like, oh, there's a time when it's right, but
Mm-hmm.
there's really truly never a good time. I mean, it's never right. you're
Never.
never You're never prepared. So what are you talking about? Oh, I want to wait until I get this, or I wait until I achieve this. Y- it's a fantasy if you think that you're going to be able to do this when you're planning it out. I mean, it happens. But if you do have them young, the benefit of that is that you're building your career, yes, but you're also not at a point where you are in a really high position with a lot of responsibility yet, so you can take the time to
Mm-hmm.
be there and raise them a little bit more, and just having them, being pregnant, just physically even do that. You can do that at that point in your career easier than saying, oh, I'm going to wait until I'm a VP of whatever and then I'm going to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize that when you get to that point, you're 24/7. Your ass is owned by that company. So, you can kiss goodbye.
Right. And then it becomes a true battle. Like I have to choose between my
Oh,
career and
and
this.
yeah.
And that's assuming that the career hasn't, burnt your body out so bad that you now, have to take other measures, which I see a lot as well with, corporate women, it's just a challenging situation because again, I think that just the world that we live in is backwards. Like it sets us up to achieve these milestones nowadays, right? It's kind of like get your degree, do this, get this job, and you look up and you're 40, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, now I gotta go and drop off this baby at daycare, you know?
Yeah.
My bones are hurting. My mama is too old to watch all the kids. You know, it's interesting. And I say that, and I know I have a lot of friends, you know, now I had my last child at 30, 36, and
Mhm.
many of my friends are just now starting to have children. So we are, you know, older moms. And so I say that obviously with a ton of empathy, but I think the bigger issue that I like to bring up is thinking about, you know, what is the messaging, right? Like why are we making these choices? What are we saying that we value when we push these things off, you
Mhm.
know? And to
I
just kind of reconsider how we can get back to how it used to be.
But I think a lot of it, another I mean, another, well, issue to consider, not a problem, but yeah, and I think that people think that if they get to a certain economic state, that they'll be happy and they'll have life
Mhm,
will be easier, or they'll be able to make choices and it'll be easier to do this X, Y, or Z. But truly, from my life experience, the more you have and the more you get, the more you want or feel you need.
mhm,
So if you just accept, all right, this is I have what I need. I have a roof over my head. I have a good job. I like my job. Thank God. Yeah, it'd be great if you absolutely loved your job. That would be ideal.
mhm,
But let's say you don't. Not everyone can do what they're totally love and what they're passionate about. So if you just do something you're happy and proud to do, that would be enough. If you have a roof over your head, you have food, you have a life, then you can, I don't know, it I think it's just really hard for a lot of these younger people to say, how am I going to do all this? And they have so many things that they're comparing themselves to, and so many things that they think they need to do or think they want or think they should be doing. They you don't The grass is really never greener on the other side. And I don't think this a lot of these last couple generations really understand that it's hard work, everything, no matter what level you're at.
mhm,
And you give up and you trade off things when at whatever stage of life you're at. It's always a balance and going from one to another. So why not just make choices that make it easier for you and just not worry about what other people or what you think you need to have or what you think you need to do, and
mhm,
just do what helps you and what makes it easier for you, and what just being able to live and being accepting and grateful for that,
mhm,
um instead of always just wanting more and wanting more and wanting, oh no, I can't have kids until I can afford to get a house. Okay, well, you in Los Angeles, oh my God, you might be 50 before that even happens. So it's just like you're always trying to get to this next stage, and you think that next stage will let you do this or this or this, and it just it it
it
doesn't
never comes. It never comes.
it doesn't really.
It's fleeting. I,
Yeah, it is. But you can all this stuff about manifesting. Yes, I think you absolutely, if you put your mind to it, I think there's a lot you can do. And there are a lot of powerful forces inside you that if you really believe in something and you think that you can manifest a lot, and I think it's all energy, and the energy that you put forth and the energy you put out there. So it's just, it's there's no map. there's no that's why we need to hear people's stories that went through these journeys and lived through life and all its ups and downs and how they navigated that. You need to hear those stories. It's in our human DNA to listen to those stories and learn from them and make decisions and know that this is normal, that life is normal this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. But only hearing these stories is going to teach you that and show you that.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, brings people a lot of solace
Yes.
not otherwise have.
Oh, good. This is just a great conversation. And it's so timely because I think that that has been the joy that I found in my relationship with my mother-in-law,
Mm.
is because my relationship with my mother is very different because I was my mom's only child, right? So the way that she raised me is impossible to replicate in my life, right? Because I have so many little ones. And so, if I was to kind of use my mother's blueprint, obviously there are wonderful things that I incorporate into my parenting, but some of it is just not there because she didn't have multiple kids.
Right.
My mother-in-law had three, but she was one of 15.
Ooh.
And so this weekend when she was here, she was just sharing stories of dinner time. She was like, we had this long table, and then we would pull out this other table every night. And these were the type of meals. Because I was asking her, I'm like, can you give me any kind of tips on how to run this ship? She was like, you got to start making more casseroles. You got to freeze them on Sundays. It was just like very practical things that to me were priceless, that I wouldn't have gotten if she couldn't have stepped into my world and said, okay, Leon, this is what you need to be doing. So like give yourself some grace. But then also hearing, that her mother pushed 15 babies out naturally, and she still put them out of school dressed and they survived. So I think stories are, I always consider myself a storyteller. I think equally, I'm just a curious person. I'm very invasive, so if you say one thing, I'm like, so tell me about that. Your father did what when you were three?
Yeah. I wish that more people fostered that curiosity. We're all naturally curious when we're children, especially, but I wish that more people fostered that and more parents fostered that in their children, themselves as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that curiosity is is key.
Mm-hmm.
Never stop learning, never stop asking questions, never stop asking why. One of the things that I am so grateful for is that I never stopped asking why. And I'm not a technical person by training. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you didn't know that, but I had to become very technical very quickly and learn a lot. But the thing that I was able to do because I didn't know what was not possible,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the thing that I was able to do really, really well is keep asking why. Because it seems to me you should be able to do this. We
Mm-hmm.
find the answer. We just have to find a way. Because it makes sense that you should, if you can do Y and you can do X, you should be able to do Z.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people that are trained in certain fields, they know what they were trained not to do. They know what they were trained. They know the limits of what they were trained to do. And I don't think that helps people go through life knowing what your limits are in
Mm-hmm.
certain areas. It helps to just push and keep pushing the boundaries of that.
Well said. I love it. So if someone is interested in using the product or connecting with the team, what is the best way for them to keep up with you all?
Storyfile.com, and it's storyfile.com/life is the actual home storyfile, where you can do it yourself, the DIY. We do have a white glove service though if they email support,
Mm-hmm.
and they can connect with, we have two amazing people that will walk you through it, help your loved one, help you with whatever you want help with. even help you do the whole thing. There are even, uh, we're on all the social media, whatever, you can find anything. Email me at heather@storyfile.com. You can, we're all very, very visible. So,
Okay.
but there are even there are video companies around the country that are starting up providing a service to, if you don't want to do it yourself on the DIY version, you can get them to help you do it.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
you have a lot of options. And I would just encourage people, I think, not because I built it, but I truly have seen the effect of it. And I know that this is such an amazing gift to give to your future generations, the ability to actually be able to converse with them.
Mhm.
But regardless, if you don't do our solution, do something. Everybody needs to tell their story to the next generation. So I would just encourage everybody to tell their story.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. My children are now home, as you hear. This has been incredible. And you guys, if you're listening, you will be hearing more from me on, advocating for this in every aspect. I know that I worked with your team earlier. We're going to get some links out there to even provide a discount to listeners. So make sure you check the show notes for that. But thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you. I really, truly enjoyed the conversation and getting to know you. It was great. Thank you.
Wonderful.